On this edition of the Steelers Legend Series, Players Only, we get to hear from the Super Bowl champions from both Super Bowls 13 and 43 again. This time, though, it's Mike Wagner, Donnie Shell, and Bryant McFadden talking about the Steelers' way, proving the naysayers wrong, and much more. Enjoy.
Well, I'd like to say, like that season for I think for the team and also for me, I'd been hurt the year before and missed most of the season. But I think, we have great fans, but the media is wonderful. Got to put that plug in, right?
No question.
But it was kind of like they were kind of saying, well, you guys aren't hungry anymore. You guys, because we'd won a couple before, okay? And you're getting too old and all these issues. And even though you try to ignore the media, right, it kind of, it kind of burns you a little bit. So it was kind of a motivator for me. And maybe the media should feel proud about that, and I'm going to egg them on in the future. But I was kind of going, no, this team is still hungry, right? This team still wants to, just because we've been there before doesn't mean we can't do it again and again and again. And the other side of it is you got to have a little bit of luck. And particularly, I think if if we got into the playoffs, what you really want to do is get in the playoffs and be healthy, right? And I think that's something too that we won 4 championships. We were pretty healthy, and we had a lot of depth going into those games, and so those are long seasons. But to go into a championship run, that's great. If you're healthy and hungry.
Yeah, I know for me, the similarities based on what you guys accomplished were similar as far as getting to the promised land before with the majority of the roster. My first Super Bowl was 2005, which was 40, and in 43 we pretty much had the same roster as far as skillful players, role players and starters. Different head coach, but the roster was still intact with experienced players. And going into 2008 for us, we had probably the most difficult schedule. Many people, as far as the experts and analysts, felt like we would finish no better than 3rd in the AFC North. And some people felt like we could potentially finish last because the Cleveland Browns had a pretty decent year the year before. So we walked into that season with a big chip on our shoulder, and we wanted to prove all the naysayers wrong, and not to mention live up to the standard. And for us, once we got into the tournament, we felt like we were the best team in all of the National Football League, and we were able to display that. And like you said, luck plays a big part. You have to be lucky, especially in a physical, combative sport like football, as far as injuries. You have to be lucky as far as not getting hit with significant injuries to key players. And also, too, having the ball bounce in your lap from time to time, a la the James Harrison play. Now, that wasn't just solely on luck, great execution, but the luck came with James Harrison not supposed to be there, and those things worked out in our favor, but we really looked up to you guys a lot. And I know for me, when I got drafted to Pittsburgh, I was disappointed because I didn't go first round. You know how it is. When you get drafted,
11th rounder.
Yeah, but you wanted to go higher than you were selected.
I'll tell my story after you.
Yeah, so I tell people all the time, there's only a handful of guys that are happy with where they get selected as far as draft positioning. For me, I felt like I should have been a first rounder. I didn't go first round. I saw so many other guys that play the same position get drafted higher than me, so I lost out on money, and then I get drafted to Pittsburgh. The first thing I thought about when I thought about Pittsburgh was Gotham City. It's always gloomy, cold, raining, like I never see the sunshine, it's gonna be tough. And instantly, my family, my friends said, you're going to an unbelievable organization because of the history. Everybody grew up watching the Pittsburghs in the 70s and success. And then when I got here and I saw the fan support, I'm like, I embraced how gloomy it is outside because this is Steeler weather, and just trying to live up to the standard of the Lombardis that you guys brought here, especially on the south side of the facility, is something that we always wanted to accomplish and reach, not to mention playing dominating defense.
Well, we had won a couple Super Bowls in 74 and 75, but that was my rookie year. And I was mainly playing on the special teams on goal line and nickelback on 3rd down. but in '78, I started. I was a starter that year. So I was kind of excited about it, about the whole year, because I was starting for the first time in 3 years. And it's a difference being coming in part-time sometimes than going back to the bench. But when you have to play all the time, you don't get you get a different sense and a different feel. So we had won 2 Super Bowls, but I never was a starter. So in '78, I started, excuse me, in the Super Bowl. And, I had this feeling of kind of euphoric. And then all of a sudden, everything just kind of calmed down. I said, oh, it's just another game. But the stakes are a little higher. But we had a great team. We had, like Mike said, we had a lot of good depth on our team. And when one guy went down, another guy could step in. And I think that was too, the advent of free agency, I think helped us not being able to move. I'm not sure when free agency was instituted, but that really helped us and gave us a mature team.
Right. So Donnie talks a little bit about, he got a chance to play. Not only did he get a chance to play, but he had a heavy hand to play. I mean, they attacked him a lot. And he was out there sometimes, and safety taking on big tight ends and wide receivers isn't the easiest thing. And, I don't know if the public, no one's really talked about it. A couple years earlier, or a year earlier, I was the incumbent All-Pro Pro Bowl player. Glenn Edwards, who was the other All-Pro Pro Bowl player. And they start out the '77 season saying, Mike, we're going to move you over to weak safety. Okay, I can't get my head back. And we're going to sit Glenn down and we're going to put Donnie in, okay? Because Donnie hadn't started to that. And so Donnie made the best of it, and he became, one of the premier strong safeties in history. I mean, I don't know who your idols were, but there's a kid right there, There's a man right there that took advantage of a tremendous opportunity and getting back to being a little lucky. Sometimes you have to be a little lucky in the draft or sign the right free agents. Not all the great players come out of first, second, fourth round draft picks.
Yeah.
And another thing too, you guys might experience it too. We had great mentors. Mike was one of them. Mel Blount was one of my mentors. They took you on your wing, man, and helped you and showed you to steal away. I remember that I wasn't starting. I got a little discouraged. I was kind of moping around the locker room a little bit, and this tall guy, about 6'4", bald-headed guy, come over and said, "Hey, Rook." I said, "What in the world? Who is this?" Hey, you going to dinner with me tonight? This is Mel Blount. Yes. I said, first of all, are you paying? He said, yeah, sure, yeah. So he took me to dinner and just kind of set me down, man, and he shared with me, and he said, man, like you're getting a little discouraged. I said, well, Mel, high school, college, I played football, baseball, basketball, and I always started. I went to college at South Carolina State University and played baseball and football and was the captain of both of those teams. I never sit on the bench. I said, I never sit on the bench, and I'm getting a little discouraged. He said, look, and I think that's when the Steelers, you guys had gotten in the playoffs and you kind of lost when you gotten in before that.
It only been one time, I think.
Oh, one time, was it?
No, it was twice, I guess.
Yeah, it was twice. Oakland, Miami.
You're right. Yeah.
So they had lost in there, and I remember I got to training camp. Franco said, "Hey, Rook, we're going to the Super Bowl." Man, I said, "Oh." I said, "Yeah, well, all right, I hear you," because they had lost those 2 playoffs games, before that, and they had a little, they had a little more. Like they had a little salt in their speech and talk and everything else, but it was it was just great to be in that atmosphere and be around good mentors. And Mel encouraged me, said, "Hey, Don, you doing great on special teams. I've never seen a guy like you go down there and make the tackle on 25-yard line." He said, "Look, everybody got a part. Everybody got a role, and you're doing your role. But I tell the truth, I really didn't want to start. I just want somebody to tell me I was doing all right." Yeah. So he, Mike, all those guys were mentors, and Mel encouraged me. He said, "Everybody got a role done. You do your part. Our goal is to go to the Super Bowl." So he brought me back into the fold of the team and showed me my responsibility and showed me that I was important in that role.
You know, and hearing you talk about the mentors that you had, and the same can be said for you, Mr. Wagner, as far as having guys to learn from. We had that too. And I think that was the unique part about our organization, because when I first got drafted to Pittsburgh, I got drafted to Pittsburgh in the second round, and I'm coming in trying to take Deshae Townsend's job. I'm coming in trying to take Ike Taylor's job or Willie Williams' job. And these guys are all embracing me and helping me get better on and off the football field. And I really respected that. A lot of organizations, especially with young players, high round draft picks, the vets do not want to help them because they feel threatened. Here in Pittsburgh, we're all together, and we used to always say iron sharpens iron. Yes. And that's very, very true, because if you're behind me and you're giving it your all every day in practice, I'll have to do the same thing to keep you off of me. And while doing that, I'm getting better too. And now you're getting better, and that creates quality depth throughout the team. My first year, before training camp actually started, OTAs, off-season workouts, I'm sitting in my locker, and I had a similar experience with that you had with Mr. Blunt, but it was JB. It was Jerome Bennett, right. And he was sitting down, and he was like, "Hey, young fella." I didn't respond because I'm like, why would a Hall of Famer be talking to me? And I'm just here in 2 weeks being in Pittsburgh. I don't really know anybody. And he's like, "Young fella, Rook, Florida State." I look. He's like, "Hey man, why don't you get all the young fellas together and come by, I think it was Deuce Staley's house or maybe Joey Porter's house, and we all gonna just hang out." And I was like, wow, are you for real? Right? And he's like, "Make sure you get everybody, not just draft picks, practice squad players too." And I was like, oh my goodness, for real? So instantly he boosted my confidence. Because it was like, if you want to hang out with me and I have yet to do anything, I haven't earned any stripes, I have to go out and give you my arm, because now you're trusting me to establish a relationship with our entire rookie class. And we had that same relationship going throughout the season, and that continued in 2008, having quality people to learn from, but also developing a unified team where everybody is together. You might not be a starter, you might not be a big money player, but we're all in this together. And whatever your role is, small, huge, you embrace it. Because when you make a play, we all make a play. And that's the ultimate recipe for success, in my opinion.
I think that's a great example for not only us and also but for young people to sow back into someone else's lives and that's been sown into yours. Mike knows helped me, Mel helped me. So when
it's a domino effect.
Yeah. So when a young rookie that played quarterback at the University of Minnesota, Tony Dungy, came and they moved him to safety, Bill Nunn put him right in the room with me. I said, "Man, what are you doing putting rookie over here?" He said, "That's the way we do things in Pittsburgh." But I was able to encourage him. He came in as a rookie, as a safety, and Bill, we matched, put us in the same room together. But he's having an outstanding training camp because he's a very cerebral, intelligent person. But then he caught mononucleosis in training camp, and Chuck just told me, Go to your room. I don't want to see you out here. Go to your room and get this rest." But you know, being a rookie, man, you don't get no reps. You lose time. He thought he was gonna get cut, but he had told me it. He said, "Well, Donnie, I think I want to be a coach, because you veteran guys, man. You look at film and stuff. You sleep and taking a nap. He was waking me up, looking at the film to give me one more look, man, before I go out to practice." Mm-hmm. So he said, I said, "No, Tony, you told me you wanted to be a coach, right?" I said, "But do you think that you might be putting football before the Lord?" He kind of stroked that old long chin. He said, "I never thought about that." He said, I never thought about that." I said, you think because you don't get to have practice time, you're not going to make the team. Mm-hmm. I said, "But you just put God first, keep putting God first in your life, and you'll see what happens." But then years later, here this guy become the first African-American coach to win a Super Bowl, and he stated in his book, Quiet Strength, the same story I shared just now. So you never know, but if Mike and Mel hadn't encouraged me, I probably wouldn't have sown back in other people's lives. So I think it's a great lesson for young people to say like I thought football in high school, college. Now I went to the pros. I never sit down, but sometimes I'm saying this for young people. Sometimes the Lord will sit you down so He can build you back up. If I would have started my rookie year, I'd have got cut because I wouldn't be able to handle the media, didn't know exposure, wouldn't be able to handle starting. It wasn't. I don't think I was that mature. But after my third year, listening to these guys do interviews, listening to these guys how they handle different things, then I was ready. So sometimes when you get delayed in what your goal or what you're trying to do, it's all for building you up to make you better who you think that you were, and then you want to be. So don't be discouraged. I'm telling young people, don't be discouraged. When you go through different trials and tests and delays, because that delay may be the thing that keeps you in the long run, and they end up playing 14 years.
Personal question from me. When you guys were doing your thing in the 70s, of course I wasn't born. But
we all
that's a cheap shot.
No, that's a cheap shot. I wasn't born, but I consider myself to be a historian of the game, and I've always loved defense. And I wanted to play defense based on the ability to be physical and just beat up the opposing person in front of you, and not legally having to, be held responsible for that, right? And for you guys, the steel curtain was created. And how did you guys create the confidence, and nowadays we call it swagger, right? To consistently live up to that signature, the steel curtain, and also to know that anytime you step on the football field, you're pretty much going to dominate the opposing offense. Where did that confidence and swagger come from?
Well, I think probably that's an interesting question, and I just wanted to comment about our last conversation where my era of players, the 70, 69, 70, 71, maybe the 72 players drafted, we didn't have mentors. Chuck Noll, when he first was hired, gathered his team together after a couple of weeks, and he said, I know why this team hasn't won very much. He said, because you guys aren't any good.
Wow, okay.
He said, and most of you are not going to be here much longer. So we didn't have mentors when I came in 71, an 11th round draft pick. How would you like this scenario, okay? The starting secondary, the first game for the Pittsburgh Steelers in 1971 was a 11th round draft pick, a free agent, and we would rotate another player who was an 8th round draft pick, all of them rookies.
Wow.
And Mel Blount hardly played.
Wow.
Okay? So, and that was pretty much what was going on as really Chuck Noll and Dan Rooney took control of putting together a winning long-term strategy to basically play professional football. All right? And the first thing they had to do was kind of clean the roster, okay? And then find the players, okay? They had the draft, they had free agency, okay? Hardly ever traded for players, okay? And we didn't have free agency back then, so the players couldn't leave, unless the teams let them leave. So that was kind of a different experience. But the other question, I think the comment was, well, how do we develop not just a steel curtain strategy of, playing this tough, aggressive defense, but how do we get, from a team where the head coach says that you guys aren't very good to in 1974, which was 5 years later of Chuck Noll's career, we're winning a Super Bowl. Well, Donnie, I think you were there then, yes, because it might have been your rookie year. Do you remember what Chuck came into our team meeting on the first day of practice after the Raiders had beat the Miami Dolphins in the playoff game, and we were going to meet for the championship game?
Mm-hmm, I was in there, yeah.
Chuck, in the media, and who's head coach for the Raiders? I forgot. Anyway, they were all through at the end of the broadcast, and as it was over, they were saying the best two teams in football played today, and the Oakland Raiders now are the best team in football. Well, that burned Chuck. But he wasn't one to really show his emotions, but you could tell it burned him. He came into that meeting, and within about 5 minutes, he said, I just want everybody to know the best team in football wasn't on that game yesterday. The best team in football is sitting in this room right now.
I remember that. I mean, the whole
yeah. You could just see the players, just like they just because team meetings with coaches, you don't have time to players. It's like third grade. Like at the end of the day, you're half asleep.
Some guys sleeping, not half asleep. Some guys.
You
sleeping.
just saw all these guys going. And Chuck wasn't a rah.
No, he was not.
His
never
attitude.
Really showed any.
If I have to motivate you, you're in the wrong place. But wasn't that one of the biggest motivating things he ever said to us?
I think so. I got really excited, man. I never heard him speak that way emotionally about our team. He said the best team is right here in this room. And everybody's talking, hey, let's go to practice. We've already put them on.
So you can have the great skill set, but what's the other big factor, particularly for defensive backs? Confidence, okay? Because you're exposed, and most of the time you're exposed when something bad happens. Right? Yeah. They're not praising you. Hey, that was good coverage. That was a nice tackle. They're saying, oh, yes, Mike Wagner got beat on that takeoff. And so.
And another thing, because I was kind of sitting on the bench observing, was that I was watching these guys. Yeah. I was watching Joe Green play with intensity. I was watching Lambert. I said, man, if I ever get on this field, I want to play with that same intensity that I saw on the field from those guys. So they set the example for me. I was watching Joe Green, watching Mike, and watching Mel, and they played with confidence. And I think confidence too comes from preparation. And I think in the early 70s, I think we had one of the best coaching staff ever in the National Football League. I mean, totally. Because Chuck believed in bringing in teachers that can teach you. Yeah. And we had some, Bud Carson was a genius. It was a genius. He never wanted the offense to beat him. I mean, not one time. He put in checks, man. He put in checks for this, checks for that, to make sure we have an advantage. But he was a great, he was a genius, man, way ahead of his time. And I think we had coaches that were teachers, and they taught us. If you're a good teacher, you can relay that to your student, and that student go out and perform at that particular level. Yeah. But seeing it from Joe Knowles and Mike and Mel while sitting back and not being a starter really helped me see if you ever start, you got to bring that intensity. You got to bring the preparation. I think preparation sets the tone for intensity, because you know what your opponent is doing. I don't care if you play them in the desert. You're ready. So we were ready week in and week out in our preparation. I think that helped a lot.
Thank you so much for joining us for the Steelers Legends Series Players Only. It was so much fun to look back at Super Bowls 13 and 43 and hear from the legends who helped bring two of the team's 6 championship trophies here to Pittsburgh.